My name is Patricia Brekke. I'm a research fellow at the Zoological Society of London. My work involves trying to understand microadaptation to climate change in threatened species. And basically what I'm trying to see is whether species that can't move, for example species that are stuck on islands, whether they can adapt to changes in climate, anthropogenic changes in climate. Because when you can't move to escape from your changes in climate, then the only way that you can cope with a change is to adapt genetically, or whether you are a flexible enough species to be able to cope with those changes that are coming. So I'm looking at the genetic changes that occur in species and the adaptive, flexible changes in species, and see how they use those mechanisms to adapt to the new environmental conditions. And this is done in threatened island species generally. I work on a bird called the hihi, which is a New Zealand bird. It was completely decimated from the main island of New Zealand, and that only remains on one very small island in the Pacific, in the Hauraki Gulf, called Little Barrier Island, from which we have reintroduced it to new islands where the forests have been regenerated to create new populations, so they're not so vulnerable in only one area. But this reintroduction process is a great way to experimentally test my questions about being able to adapt to new environments. So I follow every individual in this population I have. Every individual has colour rings on their legs. They have 3 colour rings and 1 metal ring, so I know who everyone is in the population. There's around 150 individuals. And then I trace them, so I have their ancestry, and then I can trace their ancestry from one population onto the next, in which we reintroduce them. And that way I can check how their genetics change from one population to the next under different conditions. And whether humans can adapt, I think adaptation and evolution in humans is constant, and the rate of evolution depends on the selection processes to which we're exposed. And I think although we're sheltered from many of the obvious selection processes, we have different ones. For example, we need to be more technologically savvy, which is a selection process. We need to be able to take more information from more diverse sources, which is also a different selection process. So I think humans are evolving just as quickly as other species that are exposed to different selection processes, be it climate change, or be it, different disease outbreaks, or, whatever that may be. I am working with a number of different kinds of people. So I work a lot with governments, the Department of Conservation of New Zealand I work with a lot of community groups that are involved in conservation of threatened species. I work with NGOs. I work also with people that make policy for threatened species, for example, the IUCN and the Red List of Threatened Species. I'm part of the reintroduction recovery team for the species, so I advise the government and the community groups that do the reintroductions on how to structure the management of those species reintroductions in terms of the genetics, obviously, because that's where my expertise come in. But we work in a large team of different people, and scientists are just one part of that. For me, trying to communicate my science in a clear and concise manner to the general public is extremely important, because I need to be able to get the message across about how the work that I do is important in the management and application of management of threatened species, basically. So if I don't get my message across, it gets diluted or it gets lost and it's not implemented. So none of the work I do matters in that case. So I really need to be able to communicate, and that's why this course has been extremely important, because it's helped me understand how to communicate science in a simpler and more open and approachable way, which is how I need to do it to communicate with these community groups and governments and all the different stakeholders that I work with.